Meeting of the Civic Engagement Commission. I also want to welcome the members of the public who are here, and very happy to have you join us. And since this meeting is not a hearing, members of the public are welcome to observe and will not have the opportunity to testify at this time, but certainly in future meetings we're going to be making that available to people. I'd like to encourage, if you haven't already done it, if you are a member of the public, to please sign a sign-in sheet that's going around, just because we are going to be starting sort of a contact database. We'd love to have you on it and stay connected with you. And also wanted to ask if there are any members of the press in attendance right now. Okay, I want to also thank again the Landmarks Preservation Commission for using the use of their space today. And as I mentioned last time, we are being videotaped as part of the open meeting guidelines. And we are trying to make these meetings, going to be making these meetings accessible to the public on the website. And we also have sign language, live captioning, and Spanish interpreters. If anyone wants Spanish interpretation, please ask. It's simultaneous interpretation. In the last meeting, we went around and introduced ourselves. And since we have, since it's our second meeting, and not everyone might remember each other's names, and also we have two additional commissioners who have joined us, one of whom will be here a little bit later. I thought we could go around and introduce ourselves again. So again, I'd like to just go around and have you say your name, your affiliation, and this time, to kind of vary it a little bit, I thought you could talk a little bit about the borough you're from, just say which borough you're from, and an example of a civic engagement initiative that you've seen happening in that borough, and or something you'd like to see happen in your borough in the future. So I'm going to start off to my right with Annetta.
Good afternoon.
And remember that you need to press the push button.
Good afternoon. My name is Annetta Cicharan, and my day job is Executive Director for Chaya Community Development Corporation, based in Jackson Heights. Chaya is set up to serve the South Asian community. Our primary focus is housing and economic empowerment. However, we truly serve the amazing, diverse community that we're in, with 40% of our clients being non-South Asian. So an example of amazing civic engagement that I've been witnessing in Jackson Heights is the political organizing that's happened over the last year or so, that led to incredible political upsets with the election of Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio, Senator Jessica Ramos, and Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz. And it's been remarkable to watch that shift in Jackson Heights. I've been a resident of Jackson Heights for 15 years, and it's a different place today, which is brings so much hope and excitement, and truly a sense of inclusion for new communities. Hi, my name is Eve Barron, and I'm the chairperson of the Graduate Center for Planning and the Environment at Pratt Institute. We actually teach participatory planning as the best way to produce just, sustainable communities. So, civic engagement is kind of part of the DNA of the program, and I'm very pleased to be a part of this group. Some of the most amazing, probably very, very localized community engagement processes that I've seen in Brooklyn, I've been really impressed with, are around the establishment of the city's new public plazas. It's a partnership between city agencies and community-based organizations who are actively involved in adding small amounts of green space and public space. And the processes around putting these plazas together has been very deeply engaged, and I've seen a couple that really genuinely reflect some community priorities. So I am encouraged by that. The thing that I'd really like to see in terms of community engagement in Brooklyn, but also in the rest of the city, is participatory planning around climate change and coming up with a genuine community-based climate action plan. So maybe we can work on that.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Diller. I am the newly appointed member of the commission from the borough of Manhattan, and I reside on the Upper West Side, where I serve on Community Board 7 Manhattan. I am currently the chair of its preservation committee, so this room is quite familiar to me. I previously served in other capacities on that board. My day job is as a lawyer in private practice. When I volunteered in response to the supposed Muslim travel ban in the early part of the current presidential administration, and went to JFK, I was told that copyright lawyers are not really needed there. So I ended up attending support activities there instead. An example of good civic engagement in our community right now is actually the meeting I'll be going to after this one. It is a local grassroots effort to integrate our schools. The district that embraces the Upper West Side of Manhattan, but also continues on into southern Harlem, is both wonderfully diverse and terribly segregated in terms of the schools not reflecting the diversity. The Community Education Council and the local superintendent of the district have made interesting and very concerted efforts to embrace the public and arrive at a solution to further diversify our schools and end the segregation. And it is something that, even though a significant part of it is outside of the footprint of Community Board 7 itself, because we are one district, we embrace it and engage with it, and that's something that can be emulated and hopefully fostered. Thanks very much.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Hernandez. I am the New York City Advocacy Coordinator for United Spinal Association, as well as the president of NYC Spinal, which is the local chapter of United Spinal. I don't have any specifics as, local advocacy or, civic engagement that I've done recently, but I do a lot of federal-based advocacy, and I'm actually scheduled to go to Washington, D.C. This Sunday, and lobby on some of the bills that the company I work for sets forth for everyone. There's actually a pretty big event, and it's 150 individuals with disabilities that come together from all parts of the U.S., and we bring them to Washington, D.C. and get them lobbying for their rights. The first time that I attended that was the most powerful thing that I've ever done, and ultimately led probably to me being on this commission. So I would definitely like to see more individuals with disabilities registered to vote and voting at a higher rate.
Hi, my name is Donna Gill. I am a member of Community Board 10, which is in Central Harlem. Things that I find that civic engagement in our community, we are overburdened with substance abuse clinics, and the community has gotten together to work on that so there'll be an equitable distribution of such clinics and not to have any more clinics, new clinics, come in to our district. So that's something that has engaged a lot of the community. And like Mark, I was on CEC3, worked with the Diversity Project I still go to their meetings because the school, the Southern Harlem is actually part of CEC3. So our schools are actually the ones that are impacted, which is mostly the segregation happens because it's from 61st Street to 124th Street. That's where that's the school district. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Somoza. In my day job, I work for Council Speaker Corey Johnson, and I am the first liaison at the City Council to represent the interests and needs of disabled New Yorkers. So that means my portfolio primarily focuses on improving accessibility. Accessibility is one of our biggest goals. So when we talk about accessibility, a lot of people think about transportation, and that is very true. I am very much focused on making transportation in the city much more accessible. But one of the other things that I focus on in my role at the council, but also think we need to improve in terms of a local issue, I was going to say I live in Hell's Kitchen in Midtown, and so my neighborhood, people in my neighborhood have always been politically active. I was born and raised in the same neighborhood, and that's what I've always seen is people in my neighborhood have no problem showing up to meetings and being engaged. But one of the things that I want to work on improving is making it easier for people with disabilities to have their voices heard politically and making the political process accessible to more people with disabilities, because we do have political clubs like the 504 Democratic Club that are geared toward us, but I don't think engagement on that level is where it needs to be, and I think it comes down to it being an accessibility and also an awareness issue. So if we could work on that, that would be great.
Hi everyone, my name is Linda Lee, day job Executive Director of KCS, Clean Community Services. We have 6 locations across the city, mostly in Queens, and then also one in Manhattan and one in Brooklyn. And we provide all sorts of social services for the community, everything from public health to senior centers, homebound meals, ESL, and we're the only Korean nonprofit in New York State that has an outpatient Article 31 mental health clinic. And I have to say, I guess just on a local level in our community, there's been, if I could just share a small narrative, the fact that my mom actually votes in every primary local election, I think says a lot. The fact that she said to me back in 2008, like, who are you voting for? I think, you know, when I was growing up in our community, that wasn't really a thing that you would really hear from our immigrant parents. And so the fact that that narrative is changing quite a bit in our communities is actually a pretty big deal. A lot of our seniors are mobilizing more. A lot of our community members are advocating more, and they're understanding and learning what it looks like to participate. So that's why we're excited, you know, heading into Census 2020 and other issues that are coming up. We're getting, I think, our communities are coming together, which is great.
Hi, I'm Chuck Apillion. By the way, we love your mom from political circles. She's a triple prime. And if you do work on campaigns, we just love those triple primes because we know that you're going to vote, and those are the people we try to target. So we love your mom. Anyhow. I'm the Vice Chair of Community Board 7 in Queens. I'm also the Land Use Chair. A little bit about my background is that I am a land use consultant. I'm pretty versed in that as I took that professionally when I went to school. But most of my career, I've been in the advertising and marketing business. So 2 different, but interestingly somehow that they tie in together jobs. But for the community board, like I said, I chair land use, I'm the vice chair of the board. And as most of you may or may not know, community boards have a couple of big roles. One is land use, the other one's the budget. And then parks and transportation become other major items, but it's always the budget advocating for the community and for different resources we need. And the big thing that'll always be at the board will be the land use, whether it's a variance or a rezoning or something or other has to come up. We just recently, the other night, we voted on the expansion of the Flushing, downtown Flushing bid. They've been in existence for about 15 years, and they're going to expand more than double the size of the bid. And SBS came out, and we went through a whole proposal and presentation, and the community board made the approval on that. So that was a good thing we did. The other thing also is, and I'll share the link. There's an article I just saw this morning, but if you may or may not know, each community board was given set $42,500 to use to help assist them in capital items and in outreach to the community. And we did some interesting things, and Councilmember Fernando Cabrera from the Bronx came to our meeting the other night. He was the one that was a push with this with the speaker, Corey Johnson, knowing that, in fact, the speaker was a former chair of Board 4. I think that's your community board, right, in Hell's Kitchen. So they're empathetic to the needs of the community and the funding. And we did an interesting thing, which I'd like to touch about later on, but we did a branding campaign. We spent some money on branding, and one of the things that was the lead that we took was, you'll see behind me, those blue bags, being the fact that the new law is going to outlaw plastic bags and taxing on the paper bags for single use. The lead of the, quote, swag bags that we put together was this bag, and it says Compliments of Community Board 7. And we made a lot of them, and we want people to take as many as they can and use them and give them to friends and family, because we want to be supportive of the ecological advantage and the legality of it. And we thought that was a good lead-in. So, like I said, I'd like to also discuss that later, because I think one thing that we can do as a commission is to find out what 59 community boards did with their money and what they felt was beneficial out of what they did with their money, and then share that within the commission and then back to the community boards, because with 59 different boards, we don't really know what some other people did, and they say, oh wow, that's a great idea, because Councilmember Carrera made the announcement that there will be a second round of funding that will be coming out for the next year, so we will have another $42,500, and quite honestly, I don't want to make just swag bags. I want to be able to do some things differently. So I think that would be positive to talk about that in our commission, and then reach out to the committee boards and recirculate and find out how everybody made best use of that money. So thank you.
Hi, Amy Breedlove. I wear a number of different hats. One is a business strategist at Urban Quotient, which is an architecture firm, and primarily working on affordable and supportive housing. And then I'm also the president of the Cobble Hill Association in Brooklyn. And I'm also a board member of Stonewall Community Development Corporation, working on LGBTQ senior housing. So those are the sort of hats that I wear. I think what runs through the line of work that I do is community, and forming communities, keeping strong communities together, and organizing around that. I think some of the issues that we've been dealing with, a number of the commissioners touched on. In Brooklyn, what we're dealing with a lot are the land use issues. And right now we have a few that are really large and sort of down the way in terms of time frame. So we're talking about the BQE reconstruction and the new borough-based jail system. The Brooklyn-based one will be on Atlantic Avenue. So both of these projects are supposed to trigger in 2026, and they're both decade-long projects. So the mayor has put special task forces on both of those, and we're getting a lot of community engagement on that level. Yep.
Okay, thank you, everyone. As you, oh, did someone, Anthony, oh, you walked in. Could you just, we're just introducing ourselves yet, talking a little bit about the borough.
Okay, so my name is Anthony Harmon. I am the Director of Staff with the United Federation of Teachers. I also serve as President of the New York branch of the NAACP, which is the oldest, largest historic civil rights organization in the country. And I'm proud to say that our branch is considered the labor branch. A lot of our members are from the different unions, throughout the city of New York. I also serve as the Executive Vice President for an organization known as the Coalition of Black Trade Unions. Prior to my current assignment at my job, I served as the Director for Community and Parent Engagement at the UFT. So I have a host of experience in with working with parents and young people throughout the city, community education councils, with CECs, the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council, student leaders, and the like. And I think if there's a recurring theme in my life, it would be making sure that there's a voice of labor, the voice of labor is heard at, any of the tables, and I think they bring something to the tables. And it's important that we don't forget about that and how much leverage they bring to the work that, this commission could be doing, so. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Lori might be coming from Staten Island, might be coming in a little bit later. My name is Sarah Said, and I'm chairing the commission, and I am from the Bronx. That's where I grew up. Came to the United States in 1976, and it's been my privilege and honor to work for the past 4 years in the mayor's office in the community affairs unit as a senior advisor on Muslim engagement. And I guess I wanted to talk about just say how it's been amazing in this administration, and including the work that we've been doing in the community affairs unit, to see a whole lot of communities that have never ever had a relationship with government, have never had a governmental representative come to their meeting, their house of worship, their gathering in the park, whatever, to say a few words and to introduce themselves and show themselves as a resource. And so I've had the opportunity to do that with a lot of communities, and I think that's part of the work of the Civic Engagement Commission, is to be thinking about communities that have been engaged for a long time, who have a voice, and then there's a track of people who've been engaged and become very disenchanted with the way the process works, and then there are people who've never ever engaged, right? So there are different buckets of people and types of engagement that I think we'll be dealing with. So I'm really honored to work with all of you. I feel like you're bringing a lot of depth and expertise to this commission, and a lot of networks as well. And I'm, hoping that we can work with all of the networks and assets that you're bringing as we're trying to move this work forward to define it better and figure out where we need to reach in a better way. So thank you again for all your introductions. I would like to go ahead and present the minutes from the last meeting. These are included in your folder. And I'll just go over them very briefly. The minutes basically talk about how we adopted the resolution to delegate the executive director of the commission, and the duties and responsibilities of the executive director include submitting plans and initiatives for commission review and approval in relation to the core functions that we talked about last time, which are specified in Chapter 76 of the Charter. Pursuing interim initiatives in cooperation with other public and private entities to further the core functions of the commission. Recruit candidates for membership in the advisory committees that we are tasked with building, including around participatory budgeting and language access at poll sites. And presenting these candidates for your review to the commission for review. Entering into agreements with city agencies. We talked last time as an example of the memorandum that we have with the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. And then take all steps necessary to ensure that the commission may meet as appropriate. And the resolution was adopted by a unanimous voice vote of those present. So I wanted to ask, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes presented?
One question, I don't see a date on here. I don't think it's dated.
Dated on the top, Monday the 20th?
Oh,
Is that,
thank you.
any additions or corrections? Okay, is there a motion to approve the edits to the minutes?
I make a motion.
Thank you. All in favor? One second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. So all in favor of approving the minutes for May 20th, 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So the minutes are approved. I just want to make a note here that we are attempting to follow parliamentary procedure. And I think we need to be frank and say that there are varying degrees of familiarity with this procedure. Some people are very comfortable with it, and I don't know that a lot of the public even knows what parliamentary procedure is. So we are going to be, practicing that and modeling it for people as we hold these meetings. And that's part of civic engagement. I think that, when people go into public spaces and public meetings, there's a certain procedure that's being followed, and people don't necessarily have knowledge and familiarity, and that poses for, I think, difficulty in engaging, because they have to know how to engage in order to engage. So we can also share that as a resource, from the commission, including on our website, helping people understand what parliamentary procedure is, what are Robert's rules, though I don't think we're following those to the T here, but we're going to generally sort of follow parliamentary procedure. So in the next section of the meeting, as you remember, we had sort of gone around and talked a little bit about what you think civic engagement is. And part of the reason why we want to have this conversation is because we're starting out to establish an entity that has, mandates from the public, but we also want to have a shared understanding of how we're defining civic engagement, because it has implications for how we measure the impact of our work. And it's very important to me that we all have a shared understanding. So what we did was that we took the words that you all had put on paper, and we created a word cloud, which is also included in your packet. And the way the word cloud works, it's this piece of paper, is that it sort of makes large the letters or the words that appeared more frequently, and then the smaller ones are ones that appeared but not as much. So before we sort of go through the word cloud, I wanted to actually ask Mark, since you were not here last time, if you could just say a little bit about how you define civic engagement.
The concept that civic engagement to me takes a couple of facets, one of which, many of which are reflected on your word cloud already, so I'll try to add without repeating. It is a meaningful...
It's okay to repeat. We actually want repetition because it shows commonality.
Okay. So access is, well, I guess the word I would add to that is meaningful access. That saying one has an open door and practicing that which we are preaching sometimes take on different meanings. So meaningful access means a genuine opportunity to speak and hear, listen and engage. Well, I can't use the word engage to define engage, can I? To have an impact on those things that matter to either that person or to all of us in general. The word I don't see here, and forgive me if it's there and I'm just not seeing it, is I see equality, but there's a concept that has been kicking around that differentiates equality or enhances equality, and that is equity. That equitable access is a different component of meaningful ability to participate than equality. There are trite graphics that illustrate this, and I'll spare you those. But the overall concept that I would want to introduce or champion, if I could be so bold, is the ability to ensure that resources are employed in a way that maximizes and compensates for where we start the conversation, so that we end up at a more complete opportunity to address those things that affect our civic engagement efforts and affect real people's lives in real ways. That's the best I can offer you right now.
So I thought I would just open the floor for your comments on any patterns you see. I can tell you what we came up with, but would love to hear any thoughts on this. So if you look at the word cloud, what's the largest word? Which is right in the middle. Yeah, that's right. And I think we talked last time about the centrality of community and also the importance of having diverse voices, right? I mean, you're, again, exemplary in that way, in the diversity that you are bringing into this room. And we also talked a little bit before about the common good, which is captured on there as well, communities in dialogue to promote something for the greater public. And then there's also access, right? You just talked a little bit about that in terms of equity, access to knowledge, access to participation, empower decision-making bodies. And also we talked about the importance of education, teaching younger people about civic engagement through civics curriculum, even older, adults, about how to engage, the importance of education for building a more engaged society in which people understand their rights and privileges and are able to hold government accountable, which is also here. Any other thoughts on this graphic?
Do the color distribution mean anything? It's just random?
It's just...
Okay, just to be clear.
We used an online sort of word cloud generator, and I think
I would just say that I'm struck now looking at it that transparency, listening, and responsibility seem to be in the background. I mean, there are a number of others as well, but those are hitting me right now because I know today we're going to be talking about listening and going out and seeking more input. And I really think that transparency word needs to get bigger. So I would like us to maybe talk more about that as we move forward.
It was transparency, listening. What was the third word?
Responsibility.
Responsibility, okay. Any other observations on this? Well,
I'm surprised that diversity is not explicit, unless I'm missing it somewhere.
I mean, I think it's really great that you're noticing what's not here, because that's another thing that we need to keep doing, is having a reflective conversation, right? Because we talked about this last time for 10 minutes? And I think working towards a definition or a concept and construct that we want to promote, like what kind of civic engagement do we want to promote? So part of it is about listening. It's about respecting diversity, making sure diverse spaces have access. So that could be something that we continue to build on. So are there other things that are not captured on this that you would like us to talk more about, going forward? So diversity, I have transparency, listening, responsibility.
I just want to say, I think this is an interesting exercise for us to think about how we take this to the public as well, in terms of looking at the largest words. It was our first meeting, it was our first introduction, and so it seems to make sense to me that those words that are the largest were the largest, because it's really the starting point. So I think as we go on and start to refine those words, as you said, those that aren't on here, but also giving larger impact to some of the other words, I think it's something we should really think about and capture and think about how we can then use that when engaging the public.
That's great. I just had a thought pop into my head now, which is, can you actually have a community without civic engagement? Right, because in order to build community, people need to care about something beyond themselves. And that is, to me, central to civic engagement, right? You're trying to create programs, policies, a way of being together that uplifts the needs of the collective needs of a community, right? So I feel like they're very intertwined with each other.
They are. The difference is that there is a community, but not everybody's engaged. And I think that's what we all see. You'll have a community, and there'll be those that are, like any other organization. There's worker bees, and there's the other ones that'll come out when something happens, or something's on their block, or something affects their lives. But most of the people just want to live their lives, and so they're not all engaged. So I think, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think there is a big difference between the engagement and the community itself. The community exists. That's the area that we live, that's where we work, but not everybody's engaged, and that's their choice. So I guess part of what we're going to do is try to see if we can, engage them more, but at the end of the day, probably not everybody.
Yes, I think that's...
And that's their choice, and that's okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
If I could add to that, there's an element of intentionality in civic engagement that is not necessarily a part of community. That community can arise organically by shared experiences or shared circumstances, but the goals of civic engagement are to, as I think you were saying, to broaden that experience with some of these attributes so that it is more, I was about to use the word democratic with a small d, more equitable, more diverse, so the intentionality is the additional word that I think.
I'm saying differently, like on my community board, people come on the board and then it's not what they want to do. They realize that they thought it was something else, or as I teased, they wanted the pin so they could say they're on the board, but now we do. The joke was to get the pin because, the elected officials always wear a pin, so it's like, I'm on the community board. They're like, oh, do you work? Well, not really, but I'm on the board. And, those that come that enjoy it will be engaged, and they'll get on committees that they like. And I love land use, but I really, parks, let somebody else do that. And I'm not against parks, it's just not what I like as far as my expertise. So what I'm saying is the same thing will happen. So people will, we'll give them the opportunity. That doesn't mean they're going to embrace it, or different degrees of embracement will be based upon themselves. And like I said, we get people on the community board, and some will last for a long time, and some you just look at them, and their eyes are just glassed over, and they have no idea what we're talking about, and they're looking at their watch, and so that's what I'm kind of saying, is that the community exists, but it depends on that person. Once we put everything out there and set the table for them, it's up to them if they want to.
I'm gonna jump in here.
I'm going to stop you because we actually have a conflict of interest board presentation shortly. This is a really important conversation. I think what it's bringing out is something we're going to need to continue to engage, which is that both community and civic engagement are happening on a spectrum. It's not like you cannot measure the degrees to which people feel like they're a part of a community, the degrees to which they feel like they are engaged. Some people will engage symbolically, other people will participate more, right? So we have to think about how we measure engagement. And I think that's going to be really important. So I'd like to actually have a meeting in which we dedicate a segment of the meeting to evaluation and defining this construct better. Sorry to interrupt the flow of a very, I think, engaging moment here. I wanted to spend a little bit of time. We're not going to be able to make all the decisions around this, but we started to talk about listening sessions and the listening tour that we said we would do across the city. And I had a couple of people on a call yesterday. Wanted to thank Amy, Anastasia, and Donna for joining the call yesterday to just talk a little bit about the listening sessions. Some people have also been getting requests to meet on behalf of the commission, and we were talking a little bit about how we handle those requests. Since we are so early in our development, some people we're seeing they're not entirely comfortable having these meetings immediately, and yet at the same time, we don't want to turn people down, because part of what we're doing is building relationships with a variety of stakeholders. So one of the things we discussed yesterday was that it would be helpful to have sort of a standardized deck presentation that people could take to meetings if they wanted to or felt ready to go to meetings on behalf of the commission. But that we definitely wanted to start creating a log of these requests. So if you are getting requests to meet, please send them to me, and then we can figure out how best to deal with them. Once we, develop more fully, we can also, our staff can work with you to sort of tailor these presentations as well. So that's what we kind of discussed on the call. But the other piece of it is that these meetings are a chance, I think, if you choose to take them, they sort of can be constructed as mini listening sessions, because there's always a part of the meeting where you will talk about the commission, but then you can ask for people's input on what they would like to see from the Civic Engagement Commission. We can certainly use these meetings to talk about areas of work in the commission, the participatory budgeting, for instance, or community board, strengthening the capacity of community boards, the language access piece, and just get their sort of experiences and read on these issues. But I think we need to think more about how we collect all this input from the meetings, from listening sessions. And we talked a little bit yesterday about better defining the goals of the listening tour. So there were 3 goals that we discussed. One was just to educate people about the commission, because a lot of people probably don't know that it's here and what we're charged with doing. And then to collect ideas from the public on what they would like to see from the commission. And then really sort of the vision of these listening tours is to educate and also inspire people to get more engaged. So do you have any thoughts on the listening sessions? We can talk for a few minutes about the listening sessions. I know, Annetta, you also had experience with the Charter Revision Commission and listening tour. So welcome your input for a little bit here, and then we can come back to finalize going forward. Do you want to say, yeah?
So maybe there's a connection between what you were talking about before in terms of measuring our participatory aspect and the impact of what we're doing, and the listening session, because I think we can interject an element of participation in the evaluation of our work and have other people evaluating it. We can do kind of participatory evaluation if you want. Mm-hmm. And I think the listening sessions might be able to set us up with a little bit of input as to what the priorities are, which we could, turn into some indicators of our work.
Okay. Other thoughts?
So I wanted to say that I think it's really important that for the listening sessions that we put tremendous effort in the outreach. One, you mentioned my role in the Charter Revision Commission. One of the things that we struggled with is having folks show up. So that typically with these sorts of efforts, the emphasis is placed on planning of the event and not ensuring that people are aware of the event and people turn up. And so I'm truly making it accessible in every definition of that term.
Any suggestions on how to achieve that?
Yeah, I have many, and I'm sure my colleagues as well have many. But location, time of day, outreach, interpretation, and I'm sure others can chime in. Advance notice, truly making the information available to folks multiple times, not just one-off, those sorts of things.
And another two, we talked yesterday on the call about using or engaging the mayor's community affairs department to help with outreach, because it's going to be really important if we do these borough-wide tours. Where they're going to be located is going to be key. But how do we get the message out, to your point? And their offices would be helpful for that.
I agree, but I also want to say that I think it's important to partner with community-based organizations as well as religious institutions. Inspiring the word.
I definitely agree with Annetta and Amy, and one of the things that I reminded those who were on the call yesterday in terms of increasing accessibility and participation of people who would actually listen in to these tours, the reality is a lot of people are so busy that they can't get places for any number of reasons. So if we were able to think about leveraging technology, streaming these events, and that ties into planning them with enough time so that people know that they have the option, if they can't actually attend, to attend virtually through technologies in some way or another, to be able to listen and participate as well. Like if they could send in questions to some sort of streaming setup or something like that, I think that will be key in terms of increasing participation, but also addressing structural accessibility issues for people in my community in particular.
It's important.
Another thought that derives from my career as a PTA president is the availability of childcare often facilitates the ability to participate when, especially if meetings are in the early evening, in the after work hours, which we didn't talk about time of day, but that probably is what we're talking about. So the ability of families that either split childcare duties or what have you to participate will be driven by the ability to handle your children in some fashion. That's the thought.
Thank you. Are there? So I think that we are going to be working on creating a standardized presentation and ways to track these requests. I think we need to talk a little bit more about just exactly what these listening sessions will seek to do. And maybe we can reconvene with the committee again if that works for folks and try to build this out a little more. We had agreed last time that we would do this in the fall. So we have a little bit of time. Fall will be here pretty soon, and we want to also start looking for locations and things like that, before fall comes. So we'll work on that. Very quickly, I wanted to tell you a little bit before we move into the conflict of interest presentation. just some of the things that I've been working on since we last met. As you know, we signed the memorandum that's included in your packet with Do It to perform the administrative functions of the Civic Engagement Commission. I also moved my desk from 253 Broadway to 255 Greenwich. So we are now in a new space for the Civic Engagement Commission. I've been starting to interview people and also finalizing the job postings. I met with City Council to discuss the citywide participatory budgeting process, and we'll be talking more in future meetings about what this process looks like. I met with the Department of City Planning and heard about their process for collecting input about community needs and the budget requests that community districts have, and met with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs and Operations to talk about how they're implementing the language interpretation at poll sites. We will have interpreters out on June 25th in the primary. We also have, and I think I emailed all of you about this, worked with Do It to establish at civicengagement.nyc.gov emails. So everyone should have email accounts soon for commission business. They said they would be contacting you. They have your phone number to set up these individual accounts for you. The law department is starting to work on bylaws, and I wanted to ask if anyone would be interested in joining a bylaws working group for the commission. That's Mark. Thank you. And we can try to, someone else, Donna? Okay. We can try to see if we're at a point where we can present a draft at the next meeting, but it's great to have your support on that. Also had a couple of meetings with different organizations, individuals, including the Participatory Budgeting Project, Arts and Democracy, Citizen Squirrel, and I think, again, in future meetings, we'll be inviting some of these partnering groups to come and present to us so we get a better sense of who's out there. The last meeting was a larger meeting of stakeholders. Donna came to that. A lot of people who had put together us who've been engaged with this process of creating a Civic Engagement Commission, working with Councilmember Broadlander, and they came and met and presented their recommendations to the commission. I'd emailed you all a document that they put together for us, so that's another sort of jumping point for us to think about what are the ways that the people who've been most engaged with creating this commission, what would they like to see from the commission. And then I'll also send you information on an event that I'll be talking at next week. It's focused on democracy beyond elections and looks at other cities and their processes. So I'll send you information on that in case you'd like to attend. We don't have time. We will table this for the next meeting, just about social media and what we want to do as a commission, what kind of content we want to be putting out. Let's talk about that later. So next we have a presentation from the Conflicts of Interest Board. Alex Kipp, who's a Director of Education and Engagement, will be presenting to us. We have a handout that's in your packet about things we should be knowing, and we should give you, would you like to, I will move over. Do you want to sit or?
No, I think I'll stand if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Is there any necessity for me to be on a mic? Yes. Yes? Okay.
Maybe you should sit.
Maybe I should sit then, okay? That cramps my style.
Oh, here, I think we need you. Maybe
Okay.
a chair. Here.
Thank you so much. Cheers, thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm from the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board. I'm going to, in about the next 40 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the basics on the New York City Conflicts of Interest Law, which is Chapter 68 of the City Charter. We're going to basically do two things here. We're going to talk just a tiny little bit about how the Conflict of Interest Board works, mostly so you know how you can use us. And then we're going to talk about sort of the ins and outs of the conflicts of interest law, particularly as it applies to people with substantial policy discretion, such as yourselves. The law that the Charter Revision Commission passed about 30 years ago treats basically everybody in city government exactly the same, but there's a couple places where members of this commission, the law does treat you differently. One of the reasons is because you're part-timers, so in some ways the law is a little less restrictive. But because you have substantial policy discretion, there's a couple of tiny ways in which the law is a little more restrictive, and we're going to go through all that stuff right now. Yes, please.
Maybe you were going to say this already, but I had sent in the email to everyone that since this is a public meeting, during the Q&A, just make your questions more general, and you will follow up. You'll be available to follow up on more specific, personalized questions for each of you.
Thank you. And questions is something I'm going to address in this first part here. Okay, so what do you need to know about the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board? We're a tiny little city agency. There's about 25 of us that serve a 5-member board. We concern ourselves largely with two things, the Conflicts of Interest Law and the Annual Disclosure Law. We've got 4 units to do that. When you file your annual disclosure forms, that's with us. When you file electronically, we don't need to talk about that today. That's pretty straightforward. The next unit we have is an engagement unit. That's my unit. I am the director of that unit, so, you know, impressive, I know. I run a small team, and we basically do engagement, classes, videos. Is anybody here on Twitter? Anybody here have a Twitter account? Okay, you're crazy enough to have your own Twitter account. All right, so if you are, you should follow us because we're crazy enough to have our own Twitter account, and some people say it's the best government Twitter account ever, right? Yeah, right, so there, testimony right there. So you should follow us. We're at NYCCOIB. It's a pretty good account, pretty fun, and almost always on point in terms of government ethics. Okay, those 2 units, not that important. The 2 units that are more important, one of them you've probably heard about because that's where a lot of the public stuff that we do comes out. That's the enforcement unit. About 100 times a year, you'll probably read a press release or see a news article related to somebody who violated this conflict of interest law. Occasionally somebody violates on accident, they get a warning letter. Sometimes they violate in more serious ways and they pay a civil fine. Every once in a while someone will violate in such an egregious way that a DA will prosecute it as a criminal offense, a misdemeanor crime, although you really have to scratch your head to find one of those. I think the last time that actually happened was probably Bernard Carrick, which that's going back a ways, right? So doesn't happen too often. Now, what's interesting about the work of the board is that while that has a lot of public prominence, it's probably not a good representative of the grand total of our work. The grand total of our work is this outside-sized contribution we make to giving people like you and me confidential, free advice. You never hear about these 6,000 instances of us giving advice because they're all confidential, but that's most of what we do is lawyers on call every day, taking your questions, walking you through a fact pattern, seeing what's possible, what's not. And the way it works is this. When they established this law 30 years ago and they gave this Conflict of Interest Board enforcement power, they said, look, a lot of this stuff is not black and white. Conflicts of interest is not about good versus bad. Some of it's not obvious. We don't want anybody to ever mess up on accident. And we also don't want anybody to be disincentivized to ask us a question. And that's why every piece of advice you're going to give out, except for advisory opinions where actually the names and the details of the person would be redacted anyway, but most of that advice is confidential, which means we can never confirm or deny that you even asked us a question. We can memorialize what we tell you. We can give you a copy of it so you can share it with the world, but we can't share it with anybody. And that's to create a safe harbor so you can ask us whatever question you want. Okay, we're basically done with part 1, except one very important caveat that I tell everyone. When is it best to ask for advice? Always is a good, I'll take that. That's not bad. In terms of time frame, though, you generally want to do it early. Yes, early. You want to do it before you've done the thing. Because if I've done the bad thing and I ask for advice about that, guess what? That's called a confession, right? Ask any DA, right? So just call us before. There's no penalty. A lot of times people just want peace of mind. They're 100 or 99% sure they can do the thing anyway. They just want to have that verified. So you're paying for this advice with your taxes anyway, you might as well keep us busy. And we're pretty busy, but we could stand to take as many more calls as you can throw at us. Okay, so that's part one, done. Part two, I have a little cheat sheet here just to make sure I don't forget anything. All right. Let's talk, I'm now going to try to hit the things that you need to know about the conflict of interest law, and I'm going to frame them for the people sitting at this table. So let's go through a couple of these things right now. When we talk about gifts and the conflict of interest law, and I see some of you who have been around the block in city government a little bit, maybe been to my classes before once or twice. When we talk about gifts and the conflicts of interest law, what's the magic number that we have? If you followed that number, that would be good, because that's extra stringent. The limit is actually a little higher than that. Yeah, it's 50. There's a $50 valuable gift rule. Now, what that law says is that we as public servants, we're not allowed to accept valuable gifts from anybody doing business or seeking to do business with the city. Valuable means something worth $50 or more. Now, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble here, but I've been working for the city for 15 years. I have never, ever been offered $50 worth of anything, ever. I don't think for a lot of us this ever comes up like, hey, conflicts of interest law, thanks for the fine, here's a gift, right? But maybe for some people it would. Generally, then people ask me the question, well, does that mean a $49 gift is totally ethical? Well, it might be legal. It doesn't mean you should do it just because you can do it. And furthermore, the rule is aggregate and cumulative. So if person A from this company gets me a $25 gift today, and then person B from that company gets me a $26 gift 11 months from now, that puts me over a $50 line. So we want to be careful about accepting gifts. A lot of people who work for the city just say this, look, if I'm dealing with them in my city capacity, I don't take anything from them. I think that's a pretty easy way to solve any of this. Maybe they put in a $50 rule instead of a $0 rule because nobody wanted to have an enforcement case against a cup of coffee or a bagel or whatever, these small penny ante things. But generally when we talk about meals and other kinds of stuff, we should pay our own way. Now, two things to remember about that. You are serving on this commission. You have a life. It's easy to forget that when you work full-time for the city, that you used to have a different life. But you continue to have a professional and personal life with friends and colleagues and clients and businesses that you work at. This $50 rule does not inflect those relationships, which is to say, if you had an old friend before that wants to get you a $100 gift for your birthday like they always did, they can continue to get you that gift. The place to be careful is when you have an old friend who also has matters pending before this commission, because then it may not be so clear from an appearance standpoint why the gift was made, and you want to call us for advice about that so we can look at the, how the law's been interpreted and give you a clean answer. But generally, the gifts rule is meant to be about accepting gifts from people who are trying to give them to me in recognition of my service here, not relatives giving me gifts or other kinds of things. I want to be clear about that, though. If a friend is giving you a gift and it's permissible, it's because you knew that person from before you started working here. It's not the Chris Christie rule. Is it okay to drag Chris Christie in an open meeting? Is that oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, drag him anyway. Okay. So, very famously, I mean, Chris Christie, we could be here all day talking about things, but like one of the smaller things that happened in the Christie administration was that he was involved in some decision with the Port Authority to give Jerry Jones' company some sort of vendor access in something. Doesn't matter what it is. But anyway, he made some decisions related to Jerry Jones' company. And a couple months later, there were all these awkward photos of Christie hugging Jerry Jones in the skybox. And Christie always liked to brag about all the free stuff he got, so he was bragging about how he didn't pay for it, and people were like, well, wait a second, you did business with Jerry Jones. He said, no, New Jersey, you don't understand. Jerry is my new best friend. Maybe that works in New Jersey, but that's not the way the conflict of interest law in New York has ever worked. So just, call us for advice if you have questions about that. But in general, it's not like we say, congratulations, welcome to this committee or this commission, and now you have no friends anymore, right? It's not supposed to work that way. Okay, the other thing for people, this could happen on people of any level, but it probably tends to happen the higher up you go, is events. Occasionally, members of this commission or staffers will be designated to attend some event. There might be a ticket, it might be an expensive ticket to get in, there might be meals involved, but you've been invited there to serve as a member of this commission. The conflict of interest law is fairly generous in this respect as long as leadership has approved your attendance there. So the ideal situation is some firm that deals with this agency, they say, hey, come to this event to see what we're doing, blah, 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 we'll comp you, and you want to know if you can go in your city capacity. Leadership will decide if they want anybody there, and then they'll decide if they want you there, and if they say yes to those things, then you will be approved. Now, as this agency is ramping up and those requests are coming in, you're kind of going to develop a process for this. And maybe you don't have that process in place yet, and that's fine. That's what we're here for. When those kinds of questions come up, we can answer you, on policy and disclosure and what's the best practice. A lot of agencies now just have a form that their people fill out and then council reviews it. But we'll help you develop that process as you see fit, or as you need. Okay. Next thing, outside positions. This is a place where part-time commission members are different than full-timers. New York City public servants who work full-time basically can't have any position with any company, does any business with any city agency whatsoever. So I can't work for NYU, I can't work for Snapple, which really, crushing my dreams. And I can't teach for, I can't work at Macy's as a Santa's little helper. I would need a waiver to do any of those things from the Conflict of Interest Board. You do not. The only prohibited position for part-timers is you can't have a position with a private entity that deals directly with this agency, that has business dealings with this agency. So if you've got some consulting group you're working with, or some private firm you're buying things from, and you have a position with them, you're going to have to call us for advice and seek a waiver to do that. Waivers can only be granted if the chair signs off first, and only then can it be considered by the Conflict of Interest Board. So leadership here gets the first crack at that. Okay, when you have your outside position, let's say you work for a law firm, they've got city business dealings with some other agency. You don't even have to worry about that because you're part-timers. But whatever you do on the outside, just remember this, whether you need a waiver or not. There's a big dividing line between doing city stuff with city resources and doing private stuff without city resources. And those things should not be mixed. I'd say the number one place where we see violations, about 60% of our cases, is people using city time, resources, personnel to further some outside interest, either a job or a political campaign or a business venture. And I could regale you with the stories. People have done, one person got in trouble trying to run a travel agency from their city desk. That is dumb. That is dumb. That is dumb. Why is that dumb? Yeah, we are. And when was the last time you visited a travel agency? 20 years ago, right? It's a failing business model. But in any case, but I've also seen, besides that, people get in trouble selling sneakers online or a travel agency. I also saw one member of a commission, the Civil Service Commission, fined $15,000 for running his private law practice out of the Civil Service Commission office, and it was a lot of violations. So, in any case, and I know you think, golly, that seems really silly, but you know what happens is it's the slippery slope. Right? No one can eat just one potato chip. And you get one call from a client from your outside practice, and you're like, oh, I forgot my phone, so I give him my city telephone. But then the client uses that phone number every time, and that's how a little tiny molehill turns into a mountain, right? So that's why the law says you don't do it at all. You don't do it at all. Just so you know, personal activities with city time and city resources that are incidental, like paying your light bill, shopping online on your lunch hour, making a call to a loved one, those are not violations of the Conflict of Interest Law. They're incidental, they're minimal, they don't get in the way of you doing your city job. But running a business on the clock or with city resources or doing political activity, that is with the zero tolerance. Okay, we're about halfway done. Any questions so far? I'm going fast because you got a hard out at 4:45. Yeah? Yes, sir, go ahead.
represent another organization, but you cannot bring them, you can introduce them to the commission, and if something took place as a vote, you'd have to recuse yourself.
I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so let's now articulate a couple of things there. As a part-timer, like let's say I own a law firm, or I'm a partner at a law firm, or an engineering firm, doesn't matter. Law firm comes up a lot though, right? So I own this law firm. The law firm has business dealings with other city agencies. I'm a part-time person. I can represent those clients at other city agencies. That's not an issue. The moment that my client wants to have my firm represent them at the agency I work at, I've got a double recusal situation. I've got to recuse from taking any official action related to that affects the client. I also can't take any action on behalf of the client that goes back to the Civil Service Commission. Or sorry, Civic Engagement Commission. Civic, it's after 4. Okay, Civic Engagement Commission. Yeah. So the second one is I cannot take any action on my client's matters that have to do with the Civic Engagement Commission. So I recuse on both sides. Somebody else at my firm has to partake in that. And the other thing is, because my firm now represents this client before my own agency, I will need a waiver. Now, the waiver is gettable if they put up the right walls, so I'm not taking any action on behalf of the client, but because now my firm is representing a client before the agency where I serve, a waiver must be sought, and then they'll put up the firewalls. Make sense? Okay, good. Okay, great. Here we go. Other stuff. Now, your outside organizations. You kind of beat me to the punch on the first thing, which is that basically your outside organizations that employ you, if they've got matters before other agencies, not this one, you're fine. You can represent them before those agencies, you're fine. One caveat is, of course, we never use our city title, city position to try to benefit our client. Most of us have titles that if we tried to misuse them would probably get us worse service, like me. But, right, it's a classic thing, right, where people go like, do you know who I am? And they go like, not only do I not care who you are, but now I'm going to report you for misusing your position, right? But in any case, so there's that. Now, one question that may come up, because it comes up with commissions that don't have a lot of space, like ours, and maybe this one, I'm guessing, is one of our commission members would like to donate something to further the work of the board or the commission, like maybe some space, like a meeting space. Possible. That is totally possible. Getting a donation from an outside person of space to run your meetings is not a problem whatsoever. If subsequent to the gifting of the use of the space, there now comes a problem between my firm, who's gifted the space, and the commission, of course I'm going to recuse myself on both sides from that argument, whatever that is. But can my firm donate the space? Yes, they can donate the space. And I know that because I know other boards and commissions where one of the commission members was a partner in a firm and they donated the use of their conference room at that law firm so that the commission could have their monthly meeting. So I know it happens. Now, anybody here sit on the board of directors of a not-for-profit? Okay. Unfortunately, we can analogize a bit, but there's one place where we can't because of a quirk in the way the law is written. And here's what it is. You may, of course, continue to be on the board of directors of the not-for-profit. That's clear. If the not-for-profit ever has business dealings with this agency, you would need to get agency head permission to continue to serve on that board. Again, you know, you got to work out all the conflicts because it could be real ones, right? You've got duties to the board, you've got duties to this agency. If they're dealing on the same matters, you're not sure which master to serve, so you have to figure those things out. Now, here's the thing. As a member of this board and commission, you sit on this board, not-for-profit board as well. The not-for-profit board, to the extent that it has other business dealings with other city agencies, in order to partake in those matters, you need to call us for legal advice, and you probably need a waiver to do so. And that's because of the way the law is written. So let's say I sit on this commission. At the same time, I sit on the board of directors of, let's say, Children's Village that gets a lot of money from DYCD and ACS. If I want to partake in Children's Village's city-related matters, I need to call COIB and get a waiver to do that. Waiver is very possible. Waiver is very possible, but that's what the law is going to require. Okay. Easy stuff now. Superiors and subordinates. Not every jurisdiction that has a conflict of interest law articulates this particular restriction, but we do. What it says is 2604B14 says that I may not enter into any financial relationship with somebody above me or below me in the chain of command. Now, the staffers of this commission will be your subordinates. So what are all the ways people have messed up in the past? Well, my boss cannot hit me up for a loan. That would be a violation. My boss cannot lend money to me. We had that case too. Heart of gold, this particular supervisor. He knew his guy was suffering. He said, hey, come here, man. I just want to help you. I want to help you so you can fly like the eagle you can be at 30% interest. Right? Now, irrespective of bad or good terms on the loan is still not allowed under the law. You can't enter a financial relationship. Also, let's say you're an attorney. You've got a subordinate and you're going to give him free legal services on a real estate closing. Can't do it. You can't enter into an attorney-client relationship with a subordinate or a superior. You can't enter into a suzu with a subordinate superior. And I just mention that because they've thought of everything with this. You know, you can't enter into a lotto pool with a superior or subordinate, believe it or not. Why do I know that? Because we actually have an advisory opinion on it. And why do we have an advisory opinion? Because everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know. And I'll tell you what it says is, when you buy a lotto ticket, same number with somebody else, you are buying a joint property right. We never think about it that way because we never win anything, right? Right? But that's what it is. And so if that's a financial relationship, you can play lotto with your colleagues, your fellow commissioners. You can't play lotto with any subordinate or any supervisor. Okay. Political activities. Now let's talk about a place where in one way the restrictions are the same and in one way they're different. How is it the same? No time, no city time, no city resources devoted to any political activity. We know that. Okay. Second one. Can my boss tell me what campaign to support? That feels wrong. Okay. Can my boss suggest what campaign I should support? No. Strong no back there. Okay. What about a nice friendly request with a smile? Can my boss ask me to support? No. Why not? My cynical friend with the glasses in the back. Why is that? Yeah, no, yeah. I should have explained at the beginning. I have a lazy eye, so some of you will be like, who you right there who said with the strong no. Yeah, why do you say no?
I say no because it's not legal.
Well, you're right. There's a rule against it, and the rule against it comes from the very simple bromide that when your boss asks you to do anything, are they really asking? No, they're not. Like, try that out sometime. Like, hey, I need this report done in 2 hours. Do you think you could do that? No, right? That's not what they're looking for, right? And so this is interesting. 30 years ago in charter reform, the law that we used to have on the books in the 80s said the superior, and you're the superior of the commission staff, cannot affirmatively coerce a subordinate. And they changed it in 1989, 1990 in charter revision. They said, no, that's not enough. The supervisor cannot even ask a subordinate to do anything in terms of a campaign because the ask is inherently coercive. Okay, now, here's where you're a little bit different from rank and file city employees, you who have substantial policy discretion. There's a couple of extra restrictions on political activities. Number one, we may not ask anyone in the world for money for anybody running for a local race. So we can't fundraise for people running for council, mayor, comptroller, public advocate. We can't host a house party for those people. We can't call our friend in Alaska that we haven't seen in 20 years and ask him for money. We can't ask anybody for money for anybody running for any of these local races. We also can't ask anybody for any money for any current city official who's running for any race. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, down close to where I live, a while ago, Major Owens, the congressional representative, retired. And who won his seat? Yvette Clarke. Yvette Clarke was a city council member when she ran for that seat. We couldn't have thrown her a house party because she was a current city elected official running for another office. So a lot of people kind of feel like, oh, thank goodness, I didn't want to host a house party anyway. But what it means is those of us who have substantial policy discretion, which I think is all of us, we're not allowed to ask anybody in the world for money for those local races or for those local elected officials running in any race. Now, can we write our own checks? Absolutely, you can. And can you volunteer for those campaigns? Absolutely, you can. You just can't ask other people to write their checks to those candidates. Clear? You're giving me kind of the stink eye a little bit. Yeah?
I just want to clarify, races for existing elected officials or anybody running?
Good question. So if somebody's running, so anybody running for a city office, so anybody, whether they're an incumbent or they're a challenger, running for mayor, public advocate, city council member, comptroller, I can't raise money for any of those people. Now, if there's a council member who's now running for state assembly, right? Well, not just anybody, you can raise money for anybody running for state assembly except that council member who's running for it because they're a current city official running for another office. And, you know, because we have term limits, you see that a lot, right? People get termed out of council and then they want to run for another office. They want to run for mayor. They want to run for state assembly. So it happens a lot. You can raise money. You can ask for money for anybody running for any of those races, for president, for Senate, for state Senate, but not if they're a current city elected official. So the other example would be, remember, like, this is like 20 years ago almost. Remember when Rudy was running for Senate for like 5 minutes, right? He was the mayor running for Senate. We couldn't have raised money for him because he was a current city official running for another office. Okay, the other thing that we're not allowed to do is we're not allowed to have certain executive positions in the parties, like county executive, things like that. So if you've got a high-level party position or are contemplating running for one or getting one with one of the parties, please reach out to us for legal advice because you can be involved in the parties, but there's a limit on the level of office you can hold. For those of you who know the city lore, I think the reason why that restriction is in there is because in the mid-'80s, people might remember the Donald Maness stuff in the Queensborough President's office, and that was a time when Mr. Maness was Queensborough President, and he also was head of the Queens Democratic Party. And in charter reform, they started to think, like, maybe it's not a good idea for the person who runs the party to also be a high-level elected official or a high-level official, so they separated those things out. Question?
Question is, how high is high, I guess? If one is a member of the county committee but not an officer of it, is that?
Member of the county committee is probably fine. County executive committee is going to be a problem. Can I look at that handout real quick? We actually talk about it just in something here, it just says certain political party positions. So member of the county committee is probably fine. Executive committee is definitely not fine. I think, though, that probably given your level, if you're going to be involved in the party in that kind of way, just check in with us on a legal advice call. We'll cook up some bullet points for you to make sure that you keep all your ducks in a row. Just so if you're contemplating that, spend just a little bit of time with us individually, like retail, one-on-one. Yep.
I know that keeping the question general, going back to campaigns and elected officials.
Yep.
So I can't be on a host committee, right? I can't host a party. I can't be on a host committee. What about talking to friends and relations about having hosting a party?
Okay, so the law says that I'm not allowed to ask anybody else for money. So if I go to my friend's house party and I pour the punch and I don't say anything, then I have not asked anybody for money. I don't want to be too cute about this, but that's the way the law thinks about this, right? So to the extent, now the question on the table a little bit is, hey, I don't want to ask anybody for money, but I'm asking you to ask other people for money. That's a little too cute. So I don't want to say that you're precluded from any sort of activity in relation to somebody else hosting a house fundraising. I think you can make the sandwiches. I think you can pour the punch. I think you may even be able to say how much you love a candidate. But I don't think that you can ask people for money or ask other people to ask people for money. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Now, we had a very interesting question. Somebody said, hey, here's my deal. I know I can't host a house party, but guess what? My spouse has been really politically active for a long time, And she would have been politically active even if I didn't have this position. So can she host a house party? Because we, live in the same house. And the answer to that actually is yes, but it has to be clear that it's the spouse who's hosting the party. And what that means is you have to get on a bus and you have to go to Philadelphia for a week. Doesn't matter if you just have to do it for a week, even if the proposal. No, I'm just kidding. You basically just can't have any official role in the party and the asking for the money. You don't have to lock yourself in the bathroom, right? You just cannot be involved in the asking for the money, right? Yes.
You said you can volunteer for a campaign. You work for a campaign.
Excellent question. Okay, you may volunteer for a campaign. You can't ask anybody in the world for money, but you can volunteer for a campaign. You may work for a campaign. You will not need a waiver from the Conflict of Interest Board to do so unless that campaign has some kind of interaction directly with this agency, which it may at some point. It depends. So yes, absolutely possible. You may have a position with the campaign. I would assume, although I'm not sure you guys are at this point yet, but as you get rolling out your code of conduct, it probably wouldn't be crazy to have people disclose whatever their outside stuff is to the agency as a matter of course. A lot of people, like, for example, I work at the Conflict of Interest Board. We have to disclose everything, irrespective of whether it's a Chapter 68 violation. And since you're going to be involved in civic engagement, which involves elections and other things, it wouldn't be crazy to disclose someone's affiliation with a campaign, whether paid or unpaid. Probably a good thing to know about. And that might not be for Chapter 68 issues. That might be just for optics issues and transparency issues, other kinds of things. Okay, last couple things. Okay. I want to talk about fundraising. And I want to talk about fundraising in two different ways. And then I'll talk about social media as well. Fundraising, I want to talk about fundraising in your public capacity and fundraising in your private capacity. In your public capacity, this agency can, first of all, this agency can accept gifts from people, like unsolicited. You got companies, you got places that want to give gifts to this agency. This agency can accept those gifts. Now, targeting solicitations to entities, this agency can target and make asks. When it makes those requests of other entities to donate either to this agency or to other city agencies or to some not-for-profit that serves a similar mission as this agency does, because those are all asks that you can make, it just has to be clear, one, that these people are not going to get any special favor for the donation. So you send them a disclaimer saying, thanks for what you gave us, don't expect any special treatment. The other, and this comes from a new fundraising rule that the board is either working on or just passed. Just passed. The other thing is that the person asking for the gift cannot be the person at the commission who's got any juice over the company in question. So example, I'm the chief contracting officer for the Civic Engagement Commission. I deal with this company every day. I'm handling all the contracts with that thing. I can't hit them up for a donation to the commission. Somebody else at the commission could, but not the person who personally has power over that entity. So you have to think a little bit about who's going to do the asking, but it is possible to ask for donations to this agency, to other city agencies, to not-for-profits, and you can do it with letterhead, and you can do it on city time, and you do it with city personnel, because it's an official act. Now let's move into private fundraising. You all may be members of organizations, alumni organizations, or might be you sit on the board of a not-for-profit. There might be other things you want to raise money for. So you want to fundraise in your private capacity. Also possible. Remember that that's in your private capacity, so there could be no penumbra of the Civic Engagement Commission when those requests go out. And now I want to talk about a place where I could imagine a person who's got a very rich, interesting outside life, who's now got this high-level position such as yourself, could make an honest mistake. A number of years ago, there was a person who came to head the Department of Information Technology in the Bloomberg years. And he had worked in the private sector, he'd worked in the Clinton administration, so he had this huge Rolodex of all these technology companies that he'd worked with over the years. He also sat on the board of a not-for-profit that was trying to get more computers into schools. Great, great. That not-for-profit then wanted him to send personal letters out to his Rolodex, people on this Rolodex saying, please give money so kids can have computers. So he wrote all those letters and he signed his name on them. Fine. The problem was that the Department of Information and Technology in New York City deals with lots of vendors. And some of the people who were on his Rolodex of life were also on his city Rolodex. And so those letters of those people that were on this Rolodex, but also on this Rolodex, they should not have gone out. Because now he was asking for money for a private entity from companies that he had juice over. So if you're going to get engaged in fundraising, go for it. But if you're fundraising in your private capacity, remember it can't be fundraising to any entity that's got a matter that you've got juice on, got a matter that's pending before this commission. You don't want to ask those entities for fundraising in your private capacity. Make sense? Okay. Now let's do social media. I'll end with social media. The board has a number of things to say about post-employment. I'm assuming nobody's looking to get off the commission yet, right? When you do, eventually, there are revolving door restrictions that have to do with the amount of time you have to wait before you can appear before the commission. Don't worry about those now, but as you're thinking about leaving the commission, call us for advice. We'll walk you through to see if any of the post-employment restrictions might affect you in your post-commission service. Let's talk about social media for a second. This is the last thing. Okay. Social media, city social media is basically like every other resource. So if there is a social media presence of this agency, can I go on there and try to rent out my apartment? No. Can I espouse political opinions? No. Can I go on rants to talk about how crazy it is, all of the stuff that's going on in my agency that I don't agree with? No, it's an official messaging platform that should speak with one voice. Word to the wise, this is not Chapter 68, but we have found it helpful as we've run our social media that the less people involved, the better, so that you can have a consistent voice. Social media is not rocket science, but I think you want somebody to develop a practice that is engaging, and I think that's why you leave it to one person. If you want to put something up there, it should probably go through that one person with the appropriate checks and everything else. Now, what about private social media? Private social media, you are, of course, allowed to have your own private social media. You just must make sure of a couple of things. One is that we never reveal any confidential information that we got from our city work in our private social media. What's confidential information? Information that's not foilable, for example, information that wouldn't be in an open meeting, I suppose, right? So I'm not sure that that's going to apply too much, but no confidential information. And you know where people have messed up on that? This is a little silly, but people who work as emergency medics who then take photos of what they've seen and they want to throw it up on their social media, which of course violates HIPAA, among other things. Okay. So that's one, confidential information. The bigger one is that we should make sure that as we speak as private citizens, the public knows that, right? So we do not deign to represent our agency's official opinion in our private social media. People have asked me over the years, well, I have a social media account and I want to talk about how I don't think my agency's going in the right direction. And it's not a violation of the conflict of interest law to do it. It's a very interesting area of law. There are a number of labor law cases in jurisdictions around the country, and I'll just leave, it's Wild West right now. These are not Chapter 68 things, but there was a sheriff who ran for re-election. I think it was in Virginia. His deputies didn't like him. So on their private Facebook pages, they liked the person running against their boss. Their boss won. He found out about these guys liking this other candidate, and he fired them. those deputies then brought the case to court and said, our First Amendment freedoms have been violated because basically we said we liked a candidate and now we got fired. And the judge incredibly said, liking something is not protected speech. And so they did not keep their jobs, or they did not get their jobs back. Now, that's Virginia. I don't know what the appeal was like. I'm just saying nobody knows on some answers to these questions on social media. But what we do know is that we don't represent that we're speaking with the agency's voice when we're speaking in our private capacity. Madam Chair, is there anything else that you would like me to hit?
I think we've covered a lot, and I know you have to go, but I would love to see if you have other questions.
Okay.
What you said is very important. Do not represent the agency as your opinion. Do not represent your opinion as the agency's opinion.
And you're on a community board, that happens as well there too. You have to kind of train people that like, yes, you could say that I'm a community board member. That's part of your bio, but you don't want on your private thing say the community board says this or community board says that, or I think the community board thinks this. The community board's Twitter account will talk about what the community board thinks, right?
Well, it's the same thing to say, well, what do you think the commission's going to say? Say, well, you can't speak for the commission. I can tell you what we've been talking about, but I can't give you that opinion because there's 15 of us.
Yeah, right. Question.
So I have a Twitter account, and I also have a really big national profile as an advocate, and very similar to the work that I do for Speaker Johnson at the council, and similar to the work that I would do locally through the commission. So is your recommendation, for example, when I'm editing my Twitter account, can I list that, and in my bios, can I say that I'm a commissioner, or
Absolutely,
should I not do that?
Absolutely, you may say what your official positions are in terms of like, yeah, where you work, what you do. That's not a question. It's the same thing as if you're bringing up a really relevant question that's actually a pre-social media question. And the question is, I wrote a book, somebody wants to publish my book, and on the dust cover, on the bio on the back, they want to list who I am, because that's how people make judgments about, this guy wants to talk about, forensic science. Did he ever work somewhere in forensic science? Yes, he works for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. So it's important to the bio in there. Now, what can't happen on the dust jacket is, it says, by New York City's Chief Medical Examiner, Bucky Johnson, right? Like that's using the title to promote the book. So same thing here. In the Twitter bio, you can list every position that you have, including the city positions that you have. But that's just identifying your biographical information. That's not considered a misuse of your title. Good question. Also, the Chief Medical Examiner's name is not Bucky Johnson. Not sure what it is, but I know it's not that. Any other questions? Okay. Think of this as like an opening handshake with the Conflict of Interest Board. We come out, we do these classes once every 2 years for employees of agencies, and that's to remind people, remember what these issues are. I went into a lot of detail today. What we should take away from this is like, look, you're going to call us up, you're going to talk to somebody like me, a human being that knows a lot about this law and has a license to practice law and can give you confidential one-on-one advice on the facts that you bring to them. Most of these questions can be handled in one conversation over the phone, and if they can't, we'll follow up with you quickly and get you the answer that you need. Yes?
I know you said to come to you early, but you do this for a living and you're a lawyer, so you know what early is.
I'm not a lawyer, by the way, so I'm just a big mouth.
But
Yeah.
you know what early is.
Yeah.
I mean, for some of us, we might not know exactly until we get in it.
Right.
And then realize, oh, shoot.
Right, so
I should not have done that.
Okay, so the board has, in many cases, faced facts similar to yours where people, either because something happened and they could not have known, or there's not really a reasonable presumption that they could have known, or maybe they accidentally messed up on something, and the individual who messed up, right, comes to the board first and says, look, I think I might have messed up. That's what we call a self-report. And if it really does look like from the facts that the person accidentally messed up and they didn't wait for somebody else to find out about it, but they just want to make this thing go away, it's very likely that, one, they'll get advice how not to do that again, and we're not going to worry about past conduct. Maybe we give that person a private warning letter, just saying like, these are the facts, don't do it again. That's not even going to be published anywhere. That's just between you and us, right? So over 30 years, that's been a thing that's happened numerous times, and the board is prepared to deal with that. Don't worry about that. But if you can do it early, right? Because it saves us work, saves you hassle, Anything else? Well, thank you for keeping your eyes open. So, and you've got the handout, it's got our telephone number and website. Anything else? No. Okay.
Do they ask for you or just?
They call the general number 9 to 5. There's always at least one attorney who's on a kind of a rotation duty who takes the calls for any of the calls that come in. So the operator will route them right to that attorney who's on duty for that day. Okay?
I had a couple of people who weren't here today.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before I leave, I have one of our bags on Being Fuel shows everything we did, so I know we'll talk offline later on, but I also brought the bags to replace the plastic bags, so I'll get out to everybody. And then we'll talk more about it. And yes, you do have
Yeah, A+ for you.
nice to see you again.
We're almost, oh, thank
I want
you.
to take away from the meeting, and then I'll leave this and instead of handing out.
Yeah,
to everybody.
please make sure that you grab a
This
bag.
is what we gave, and you can use this for shopping and give them out to people, use them. They're great.
Thank you
I have
so
to leave, I'm
much.
sorry.
Thank you, Chuck. As we're moving to we're almost at the end, but I wanted to invite Lori, if you could just introduce yourself. She's our commissioner appointed by the Staten Island Borough President. Hello, everyone. And you have to press the button.
Hi, my name is Lori Fiorito, and I'm with come from Staten Island. It was a heck of a trip tonight in the rain.
Thank you for making the trip.
No problem at all. As I had met with Sarah, I had said I was honored to be appointed, and I'm hoping to, have a voice here and help out as much as we can.
Thank you. So are there any issues or concerns that anyone would like to raise now or suggest for the next meeting? There were some things, not a bunch, but some things that we wanted to talk about today, including the social media piece that we'll definitely put on.
And when will we talk about the committees? Because that was referenced in the document that you gave us about establishing the committees and putting people on those committees,
You're
so.
talking about the advisory committees for
Right.
participatory budgeting and language access. I will work on putting together some criteria for who can serve on the committee, and we need to sort of move quickly to have those advisory committees in place. So I'll make sure that that's on the agenda for next time.
And I also just want to say about the emails, because I talked to Chuck before the meeting started, that we're getting these emails as commissioners, and I want to just say to everyone, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I just want to say that all of our emails are foilable. So if you're going to do commission work, I would say that we should be doing it on our commission email.
Yes, that's exactly right, and that's why you will have an account, for sure, at Civic. Your probably your first initial last name at civicengagement.nyc.gov. So we'll be sending you emails to that CEC account. Any other? Yeah, the next meeting was scheduled for July 10th from 11 to 1. And part of the reason we're trying to move it around during the day, I think, again, trying to find ways to be inclusive and bring people in different times of the day. Right. If there's no other issues or concerns, I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting. Sorry? Oh, okay. All right. So without any discussion, so we'll just call this meeting to adjourn. And again, the next meeting will take place on July 10th from 11 to 1, and I will send out a location for that meeting. Thank you very much for being here. Yes.